Jake Hatch of Locked On Cougars last week on the Monty Show. Monty said, the man they call Monty said that we're headed toward a Super League. His sources have confirmed that there is substantive evidence that the SEC and the Big Ten are going to take up Group of Five schools, take up Big 12 schools, ACC schools, and create their own super conference. You work for a pretty reputable radio station. Like, you were at BYU practice yesterday. You've got boots on the ground in really the same region and have a lot of really good. Are you hearing anything close to this?
Frankly, no. And here's the deal. I have worked around Monty for quite some time, and I'll just be very blunt. I take everything he says with a grain of salt. His track record is less than stellar. Let's just put it that way. Now, I will say this, Drake. I think there's some point down the line that a super league or super leagues come into fruition. But the way that Monty talks about it, it's like it's coming tomorrow. That's just not going to happen. We just talked about the fact that the ACC, they've probably got a lifeline of about 3, 4, 5 years here before things really devolve into what we expect, the chaos that we all expect. But yeah, super leagues, it feels like they're still a ways off. And the bigger point to be made is, if you're going to create a super league, where is the money going to come from to fund that? Are the ESPNs, the Foxes of the world, but whether it's Amazon or Netflix, are they going to want to pony up the potential billions, with a B, billions of dollars to make this reality? That's a massive question mark, and those are answers that remain unanswered right now. So, I take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, I think you said a lot without saying too much there, Jake. The tell for me, this is, as you alluded to, a conversation where anything leaked would likely come from ESPN or from Fox, from a TV network, or some sort of entity that is going to sponsor the Super League happening, that has the money to say, hey, because we just learned it's a $200 million price tag to exit the ACC. So if you're going to create a Super League, someone has to have $1 billion to pluck out the valuable teams from the ACC and place them in the SEC or the Big Ten. And that same goes to the Big 12. Yeah, Jake.
And that's just the $1 billion to get them out of the league. And then you have the, let's say, hundreds of millions that are going to be paid out in media rights deals, because I don't know if they have pro rata clauses with the Big Ten and the SEC right now, but the way that money's going for those conferences, there are going to be $100 million payouts for each of these schools. Do you have a pro rata clause with ESPN or Fox that says, hey, if we add X, Y, and Z school, that goes up by $100, $200, $300 million? I have a question as to if they're going to be willing to do that.
Yeah, it's going to cost somebody a lot of money, especially if this does happen tomorrow. Overall, are we, if you're a Big 12 fan and you hear this kind of news, and this almost gets into a journalistic conversation of what to believe and how to, you mentioned grain of salt. If you're a Big 12 fan and you hear this news, should I be scared? Is this like a break the glass, press the red button? How do you vet? This is almost a question of how do you vet information right now?
Well, here's the deal. Listen to everything, trust nobody. I've heard that from multiple people in the media sphere. The bigger point to be made here is, yeah, the future of college football is really unclear right now. What ultimately is going to morph into? We're watching guys, Drake, now as college football players making millions of dollars. My university, speaking of BYU, is going to pay a basketball player reportedly $8.5 million next year to play one season of basketball in Provo, Utah. Had you told me that 10 years ago that BYU is going to be getting the number one recruit in the country and they're going to pay him darn near $10 million to come and play, I would have fallen over and said, yeah, you're lying. But here's the deal. That's the future and what the present is in college football, and it's only going to get worse from there. Anybody who says they know what the future of college football is right now and what it's going to be, they're lying through their teeth.
There is a non-zero chance that we ultimately do go to a Super League. You throw something against a wall and it sticks. Hey, if I'm breaking in 10 years, the AAC is going to be different than it is today. I am breaking that news. My sources are telling me that's just, it's very likely we'll get to what you could call a Super League at some point. Do you think that is based on kind of what we talked about with the ACC 2030? Like, how soon could, if we're just throwing out takes here, throwing out sources, how soon could that actually come to fruition?
To me, I think it's 2030 at the very earliest. That just feels like that's kind of the clear marker of when these media rights deals for a bunch of the conferences, including the Big 12, come up for their next round of negotiations. As we've already talked about, the ACC could be on its way to being completely gutted at that point. That feels like the very earliest. But once again, we're seeing multi-billion-dollar media rights deals being signed by pro leagues out there. I just feel like, can you get an ESPN that all of a sudden is leveraged with debt? They just canceled their MLB contract, tried to essentially, take it from $500 million to $200 million, and you can expect that the ESPN's going to turn right around 5 years from now and be willing to pay $3-4 billion for this proposed super league that you don't necessarily know what the parameters and the look of it's going to be. I'm hard pressed to believe that that's going to be able to come to fruition that quickly. So I think we're probably looking middle part of the next decade, so maybe 10 years from now before something really happens.
Yeah, if the ESPN is losing money on a product like Major League Baseball, and we've seen they've ruined the NBA as well and the NHL, it's tough for.
Yeah, and that's the thing, that they paid the NBA $2.8 billion, and that's a big reason why they cut back on their MLB contract. Because all of a sudden they're like, hold on, the math isn't mathing here of our return on investment for the NBA, but we got to have the NBA. So they're overpaying for a product and trying to cut in other areas. We've already seen the cutbacks with their talent, et cetera, the behind the scenes and both on-air staff. ESPN's an unsustainable model in terms of, I think, what the money, where it's being thrown around. And that is where I have question marks about if they can really fund what some people believe college football is going towards.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they're going to be able to, especially the way that they've now taken the SEC under their wing. And again, we've seen ESPN kill the NBA and kill the MLB. Will the SEC be the next victim of what ESPN puts you through under contract? Jake, is this, though, I want to play the role of TV executive.
Okay.
We all love Thursday night football, Monday night football, Sunday night when the Chiefs are playing against the Lions. Everyone loves that. Tune in. It's awesome. What ESPN, it seems, what I want to do as a TV executive is give you more Georgia, Ohio State. Now, instead of just seeing that once a year, you get it twice a year and then in a national championship format. You make it almost NFL. Like, I want 30 teams so we see more often Alabama play Michigan. Yeah. Why shouldn't I try to get that? Why shouldn't I try to bring college football to where it's just 30 power programs that are playing marquee games all the time?
Well, you should try for that. The question is, are all the other parties that would be privy to that conversation or conversations, are they all going to be on the same board here? Because you got two very proud leagues in the Big Ten and the SEC who have got their own traditions, their own power programs. Are they going to be willing to essentially acquiesce to each other's request and say, hey, we'll do whatever you guys want us to do? We're seeing the TV numbers and the TV executives, they control this sport more and more, and they will continue to do so as they pump more money into it. I'm just wondering at some point if there's a breaking point for these leagues, Drake, where they push back and say, you know what, enough's enough. We have essentially done everything you've wanted us to do. We have fractured rivalries. We have completely eliminated conferences. We have broken up fan bases essentially along conference lines. Where's the breaking point here? And I think at some point they will hit that. But then again, I've seen things I never thought I'd see in college football. So maybe they'll just keep going along with what the TV executives want them to do.
As long as there's money there, that's what they're chasing after. Coming up, BYU got Utah's basketball coach fired. What? This is a Locked On Big 12 Locked On Cougars crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.